Bienvenue, les amis. Welcome, friends. Welcome to the Travel Experience de Voyage channel. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how to change your oil on the 2018 and up F-150. I believe that's the 13th generation F-150 with the second generation Ecoboost 3.5 liter engine. As you can see, oil change is required. I have 0 mileage left. Or 0 left on my oil change lifespan. I actually needed to change my oil around 600 kilometers ago. It's just the weather's been really bad lately here on the west coast of Canada. I'm currently in Vancouver, and I just had needed a good day to change the oil because I don't have access to a garage. And I'll be discussing some of the warranty information that I was given when I purchased my vehicle. I'll have that later on in the video, but we'll get started. So I'll just select this. Oil changes required. Yes, my check engine light is on. I'll be having that looked at. Actually, I'll hook up my scanner and put that on at the end of the video. But currently I have 110,000 kilometers, 110,621 kilometers, and I needed to change my oil around 600 kilometers ago. My oil change intervals, I'm sorry if I sound a little raspy here, excuse me. Yeah, everybody's getting sick around this time of year. I change my oil every 10,000 kilometers. However, we will be changing that to every 7,500 kilometers after this oil change, just because I want to increase the intervals. Keep running clean oil. This is the second generation 3.5 liter Ecoboost, so it does have both port and direct injection, both port and direct fuel injection. So we'll get started. So apart from having an oil filter wrench, gloves, rags, whatever, oil pan for catching your oil, you obviously need an oil filter and some oil. So I always recommend going with the factory Ford oil filter. This is the FL500S. This is the oil filter you'll need. Some guys go with Mobil 1 or other branded oil filters, Wix, Fram. I don't ever recommend using a Fram Orange Death oil filter. Those are absolute rubbish. Factory oil filters are competitively priced, at least from Ford, and I just go with those. And if you are still under warranty like I am, then you must use a Ford oil filter. And again, I'll be discussing the warranty later on in the video. 5W30 is the grade of oil that you'll need, or the weight of oil you'll need. I always recommend full synthetic. And I've been using full synthetic since the 90s across all vehicles that I own. And specifically for the Ecoboost, the Ford Ecoboost motors, you will want one that says SN Plus right here. So SN Plus is what you'll need. Make sure the oil that you're using has that designation. Oil is relatively, at least where I am, competitively priced. I just purchase whatever's on sale. These jugs were around $40 each, and the oil filter was around $18. Now, I changed my own oil. The Ford dealer wanted $300 for a fucking oil change, if you could imagine that. $300 fucking dollars. Like, yeah, that's crazy. Everything you see here cost me $100. $80 for the 2 jugs of oil. They're 4.7 liters each jug, and I won't be using both of them. I'll be using 1.5 of them or so. The oil capacity is 5.7 liters with an oil change. And so $18 for the oil filter, for the factory oil filter. So that's a lot of money saved, $300. The least expensive oil change place I found close to me right now was around $130, which is only a $30 difference. But you know what? I'll keep the $30 and I'll do it myself. Also, the oil change place was one of these, yeah, I wouldn't even recommend going there because I called them up and the guy, he sounded like he didn't even know how to oil a bicycle chain. So I'd much rather do this myself and create a video, share it on YouTube, and help you guys save some money and learn a thing or two. All right, we'll get started. Again, my vehicle's 2018. This is what the 3.5 liter second generation Ecoboost looks like. This is bone stock. So aside from the oil catch can, which I'll be discussing later on, the rest of the engine is basically stock. There's no cold air intake or anything. This is just how it is. And when I purchased the vehicle, they made it very clear that if I do any upgrades, it has to be through them. Like it has to be installed directly through them. And depending on the upgrade, like a tune will absolutely void my warranty. That was directly from my finance manager who sells the extended warranties. These vehicles, at least here in Canada, if you try to tune them, you are voiding the warranty. And any performance upgrades has to be done at a Ford dealership. I will be upgrading some things in the future, but that's not what this video is about. So first thing, I remove the oil fill plug here, set it aside so that I don't frickin' lose it. And I pull the dipstick. Even with my height, it's a bit of a reach because my truck is slightly lifted. There we go. I generally keep a rag in the engine bay. So I don't make a great big frickin' mess. I hope you could all hear me okay, otherwise I'll have to adjust the audio. Yeah, everybody around me right now is sick. I'm feeling okay, it's just I do have a little bit of a cough. Also, I do check the contents of my oil catch can every time I change my oil. This one particular model has a dipstick. There isn't really much in there. But this is a second generation Ecoboost, not the first gen. Excuse me. So now we'll head down below and we will start draining the oil. Now, as you can see, I have this cardboard fabric splash shield. This is a splash shield and sound deadener. It is not an actual skid plate. Some F-150s are equipped with this, some are not. If you do have one on your vehicle, there are 4 8mm bolts that have to be removed in order to access the oil pan drain plug. So I'll be removing those and then that'll gain me access, and then I'll show you what to do next. So this is the splash shield removed. Where my hand is pointing towards the front of the truck. So I have a bolt here, a bolt here. Here's one bolt that's still stuck. That just came off. And there's one at the other corner there. So that's all the bolts that hold it in place. I just use my little impact with the 8mm socket. And now we'll go take a look at the oil pan drain plug. Here's the plastic transmission pan, which I'm not a fan of. And that little yellow plug there, that's the oil pan drain plug, also with a plastic oil pan. This is the first vehicle I've ever owned with plastic fluid pans, plastic transmission pan, plastic two-piece plastic oil pan. These are known for leaking. But basically, this one doesn't even need a socket. The earlier Gen 1 Ecoboost 3.5s used a socket, a 15mm socket. This one does not. So you just twist that socket, this plastic socket here. Twist that off, and that's how you drain your oil. I'm going to set up a light just to make it easier to see everything. So you just twist that counterclockwise and the oil comes out. You will spill some oil on the frame, so have a rag ready. And if you can, get cardboard underneath to catch anything, any little droplets, and have your oil pan ready to catch everything. And I'll be draining that pretty soon here. Here's the drain plug again. Just twist it counterclockwise. I have my oil pan ready to catch everything. So here we go. Oh, this one's a little tight. Twist it like that, and oh shit, bitch. A little bit of a fucking mess. Whatever. Keep a rag ready. So we'll let that drain out for a little while. Yeah, while that's all draining and I clean up this fucking mess I made. Normally it's not supposed to be that messy. Yeah. While that's draining out, I'll get the oil ready. The fresh oil ready. Yeah, so while the oil is actually draining there, I'm going to prep the oil filter. This is a procedure that not everybody does. I actually pre-fill the oil filter with some fresh oil. In the automotive industry, there's a great big argument with oil change guys and mechanics about whether you should do that or not. I personally do. Now, because the oil filter actually mounts sideways, I don't fill it up all the way. I put about, I put a little bit in there, maybe not even 200 milliliters, just whatever. And obviously you have to apply some oil to the gasket there. The oil's still draining, but we'll get started on removing the oil filter. So as you can see, just mainly droplets now, so it's fine to put the oil pan drain plug back in. You should try to have your oil change done when your vehicle is hot, as I mentioned earlier. Makes everything a whole lot easier. Oil will drain out faster. I usually go for a drive about 10 minutes or so, make the vehicle reach operating temperature, and then I start changing the oil right away after. And this is the oil pan drain plug. Before you pop it back in, make sure it's in good shape. None of the tabs are broken or anything like that. There's a little green gasket, as you can see. Make sure that gasket is in good condition, otherwise you will be leaking oil. I was never really a fan of these in the beginning, and I'm starting to get used to them. Old school guy like me. What I'm not used to is a plastic oil pan or a plastic transmission pan, which is what Ford uses, at least on my vehicle. Yeah, certainly don't like that. I prefer a metal oil pan. Next time I service my truck, I'll jack it up a little bit and have better views. But yeah, make sure you inspect your plastic oil pan drain plug. Nice thing is you can't really strip these. But then again, if you are stripping a traditional oil pan drain plug, a metal one, you probably should not be working on cars. Okay, so I'm going to wipe down the mating surface a little bit here. Then I'll pop this back in. And you can't over tighten it, can't over torque it. That's the nice thing. It's really easy to pop back in. No tools required. Now we're ready to remove the filter. So there's the oil filter right there. It's located slightly on the driver's side of the vehicle, just at the front of the engine. It is mounted sideways, like I mentioned earlier. It is a downstairs oil filter. If you don't know what that means, back when I was in the automotive industry, we used to talk about oil filters being upstairs or downstairs, and that basically means the location of the oil filter for accessibility. If it was a downstairs oil filter, like most GM vehicles were, and I worked for GM, then the oil filter is removed, basically accessed from the bottom. If it was an upstairs oil filter, like some of the European vehicles, which a lot of European vehicles to this day are, they use an upstairs oil filter, which means the oil filter is located at the top of the engine, or at least accessed through the engine bay. Hence the term upstairs oil filter. But this is a downstairs oil filter, and it's accessed just through the bottom here, mounted sideways at the front of the engine, slightly to the driver's side. And we'll just use an oil filter wrench to crack that off. So my GoPro Hero 9 Black just overheated. So it didn't film, it wasn't filming me loosening up the oil filter here, but I do have it loose. I just use an oil filter wrench that helps me remove the whole thing. It's a little tight in here depending on excuse me, depending on the type of oil filter wrench you have, but I do have it loose, and hopefully it films this. But now I'll be removing the oil filter. It is going to make a little bit of a mess. All oil changes make a little bit of a mess. You can see there's a little opening on the front skid plate. That's for the oil to drain out. Yeah, there's no avoiding it, but you will get oil on your skid plate. Just got to clean that up after. And you'll also want to make sure that you clean off the mating surface of your oil filter mount, and make sure that the oil filter, when you remove your oil filter, that the gasket is not still on the mount and still not on the engine. So there's really no need to ever install an oil filter using an oil filter wrench. Some guys that like to use an oil filter wrench to tighten your oil filter. I never recommend that. So one of the things that I want to show you briefly here while I'm filling up with oil is turning the actual jug of oil sideways. This is an old trick that an old mechanic taught me back in the day, back when I used to work for General Motors. And this makes it a little bit easier so you don't make a mess when you're filling up, because the jugs, when they're full, as you know, there's no air coming out, so they just plop out and sometimes they make a mess. So turning the jug sideways helps make it a little bit cleaner, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So I just finished topping up the oil here, and before I start up the truck, I just go underneath briefly, check to make sure everything is good. Oil filter is nice and tight, oil pan drain plug is nice and tight. I just did that, but just to show you. The new oil filter's in. Oil pan drain plug is nice and tight. Everything's looking good. So now I'll start up the truck. I'll run it for about 30 seconds or so, and I'll rev it a few times. Then I'll shut her down, let it sit, then I'll check the oil level again. Yeah, it still says oil change required. I'll be resetting that in just a moment. Here we go. See the oil pressure gauge go up to normal pressure. Oops. Just let it sit for a bit, let it idle for a little bit. I'll rev it a few times. Now that I let the truck sit for a little bit, I'm going to check the oil level. And that's exactly where I want it to be. And this has been something of a debate. So on first generation Ecoboost motors, you absolutely should have an oil catch can. I actually recommend not even going with the first generation Ecoboost. If possible, I'd go with the 5-liter if you are going the route of owning an F-150. But if you have a second generation Ecoboost, such as myself, there have been a lot of people that said you do not need an oil catch can. I installed one anyways, and I installed one specifically single. I don't believe you need a dual, but just to show everybody, this is how much oil accumulates in an oil catch can over 10,000 kilometers. And I don't drive the piss out of my truck. As you can see, there's almost nothing in there. I use just regular petrol. I don't use 89 or 91 unless I'm towing. So before I start packing everything, I just button everything up. So dipstick is in all the way, and I physically touch everything, because that's one of the things that I did when I was in the automotive industry. We were taught that you touch everything to make sure everything is nice and tight. So oil filler cap is nice and tight. Oil dipstick is in all the way. Splash shield is in, all the bolts are in, I tightened them up. Everything's looking good. Gonna go for a quick drive, but before I do, a few little things that I like to do when I'm doing my own oil changes. I made a little bit of a mess in the driveway here, so I'll be degreasing that. I'll be degreasing the engine as well. So I just have degreaser in this wand and bucket, so I just degrease a little bit. Around the oil filter housing, wherever the oil would have been. I don't normally make this much of a mess when I'm changing my oil. So one of the things that I do at the end of an oil change is I take my empty oil jug and I empty the used motor oil right into it. So that's the dirty oil. And then I take this to a recycling depot. Usually it doesn't cost you anything. You could just call ahead to a lot of these quick lube places. Dealerships usually don't take used motor oil, but some of these independent shops will. You'll just have to check your area, and don't be an asshole and dump this somewhere. I mean, for fuck's sakes, it doesn't take a lot of effort to just drop this off to a recycling depot, and it at no cost to you other than a little bit of your time. So that's one of the things I also like to do. And now we'll go for a quick walk around and go for a quick drive. Now I'm just going to reset my oil life monitor because it still says oil change required. So I'll select OK. Go down to engine information. Oops, so that's actually the wrong one. Advanced settings, sorry. Advanced settings, vehicle, oil life reset. There we go. And reset it. Back to 100%. And my default view, I just keep on trip 1. So just a quick overview before we get started. Actually, you know what? Let's go for a drive. It's the weather's not bad out, despite this being Canada. It is 4 degrees, but the weather's nice, and it is New Year's Eve. So let's go for a quick drive, and we'll talk about this oil change and some other things. So some of the things I wanted to discuss before I end the video. Wow, that's cool. Check that out. Yeah. So some of the things I wanted to discuss as an overview before I end the video. According to Ford, you should have your oil changed at the absolute most by 12,000 kilometers. The oil life monitor will remind you when you need an oil change, even before you need an oil change. It will remind you, as well as the app, if you have a Ford app. Like right here, Ford Pass. It'll remind you when you need an oil change and all sorts of other stuff. But 12,000 kilometers for me is actually pushing it. I changed my oil every 10,000 kilometers with full synthetic and with a factory Ford filter. And I use factory filters for every vehicle I own. That's just my preference. In this particular situation, I have to use a factory Ford oil filter just because of the warranty, which I have no problem with. But overall, from this point forward, I'll be changing my oil every 7,500 kilometers just because I don't want to run into issues further down the road, such as cam phasers and all that, which I probably will run into. I have an extended warranty up till 200,000 kilometers or 2029, whichever one comes first. It'll probably be the 200,000 kilometer mark before it hits 2029. So in regards to warranty, you need to keep your receipts. So I have here my receipt from Walmart. So as you can see, I purchased that oil for $81, basically $80. And I also purchased the oil filter for $18 from directly from a Ford dealer here. So I'll keep those 2 receipts just for records. And my finance manager, who also sells the warranty, I specifically asked her, when I purchased my vehicle, I specifically asked her about extended warranties, and I asked her, can I change my own oil? Can I do my own maintenance? She said, absolutely. Now, excuse me. The only thing is I must use Ford parts, Ford original parts, and Ford approved fluids. It doesn't necessarily have to be Ford fluids, but it has to be Ford approved fluids. So coolant changes, transmission fluid changes, all that other stuff has to be with Ford approved Ford approved fluids, and the actual parts have to be OEM Ford. And as long as I keep the receipts for that and I document everything, then I have absolutely no issues regarding warranty. And for myself, I'll actually be writing down, I'll be stapling the receipts all together, and I'll be writing down the mileage on my vehicle just as a record. So that's in regards to warranty. If your vehicle's not under warranty anymore, if you purchase a vehicle, or if you own a vehicle excuse me, from Ford or any other vehicle that's not under warranty, I mean, you can change your oil when you want to. I recommend changing your oil at the absolute maximum, 10,000 kilometers, and always using full synthetic. I've been using full synthetic since the 90s. Before I drive off, I do a full walk around. So walk around your truck, walk around your whole entire vehicle, make sure all the tools that you brought out, you have them with you, pack them away. You don't run over everything or anything at all. Check underneath the hood and every location you worked on your vehicle. And also, just like how I showed earlier before I fired up the truck, physically touch all the bolts, you know, oil pan drain plug, oil filter, dipstick, oil filler cap. Make sure everything is nice and tight before starting up the truck and before driving off. Before we go for a drive, one thing I completely forgot, but I said I would do, is see what's going on with my check engine light. So just have my little diagnostic scanner here. I've had this for a very long time, and it's paid for itself many times over. So let's go take a look. I actually know what it is already, but I just wanted to show this on the video. So here we are with the two codes, P0455. Evaporative emissions control system leak detected. That's the first code. Second code, evaporative emission system purge flow performance during boost, P144C. A lot of this is attributed to the gas cap, the fuel filler cap. So I'll be looking at that at a later video. But usually it's due to the sealing around the fuel filler cap, the gas cap. So we'll just step outside for a moment. It's usually due to the sealing around here, which needs to be cleaned. But I'll be featuring that in a future video. Okay, let's go for a drive. We're going to go into sport mode, which I don't normally do. But the roads are relatively dry and just changed the oil, so let's go have a little bit of fun here. You know, the first time I test drove my truck, I was driving around with the sales rep, and I told him I never had an Ecoboost motor before, and he was a straight up guy. He wasn't a bullshitter or anything, and he told me, yeah, avoid the generation 1, the first generation Ecoboost, they're all shit. And I told him, because I was actually looking at a Ram Rebel, but the major selling point for me was for this was it had a 2-meter box. I can't deal with a 1.7 meter box that most trucks have, and the Ram Rebel does not come with a 2-meter box. And but it did come with the Hemi, and I've owned a Ram with the 5.7 Hemi previously, and it was a great motor. A bit on the thirsty side, but it made fantastic sounds. It made fantastic sounds, and it was really powerful, and a whole lot better than the 5.4 liter 3-valve I had in my previous F-150. So my sales rep, yeah, we were driving around and we were talking, and he had me go on this one section which was a steep incline, sort of like this, but going uphill. And he said, yeah, go ahead and mash on it. And I didn't want to mash on it because I'm just test driving a vehicle, right? I didn't know what this truck was going to be like. But I gave her some juice, you know, I gave her a bit of piss, and I was actually quite surprised, because I said to him, I said, hey, it actually sounds pretty good for a turbo 6-cylinder. And you know, trucks are always supposed to sound like 8 cylinders, right? Traditionally. And I said, wow, it actually sounds pretty good. What I didn't realize, and I totally forgot at the time, was Ford pumps V8 sounds, 8-cylinder sounds through the speakers to make you think that it's an 8-cylinder engine. I totally forgot about that. But from the outside, you could obviously tell it's not an 8-cylinder engine. But I do have to say, fake sounds, they do sound okay. They actually do sound okay, but not as nice as an actual 5-liter Coyote from Ford. The 5.7 Hemi, even stock form, sounds really good. Oh, I was hoping this stretch would be empty. I would have given her a bit of piss here. And by the way, my truck's name is Cuddle Buddy. Let's see if there's an empty stretch of road coming up on the right. Usually is. I don't want to give her too much piss though, because I don't have a proper GoPro mount. A lot of construction around here. Oh, it's too much construction. Oh, that's too bad. Too much construction, otherwise, yeah. Yeah, that's too bad. Oh, well. See if we go back, I don't know how clear the road will be. I do have a lot of plans in the future for upgrading my truck, but you know, I also have plans on visiting, I also have plans of traveling in 2025. It all really depends on my schedule and my budget. Just waiting for a turn here. Yeah, I don't think the road will be too empty, unfortunately. Surprisingly busy for New Year's Eve, and it's only 13:03 the time, 1:03 p.m. Yeah, the road's too damn busy. I guess I'll switch back to normal mode now. But anyways, if you found this video valuable and you learned how to do your own oil change on your F-150, 13th generation F-150 with a 3.5 Ecoboost, or even if you learned something about changing your own oil, warranties and such, catch cans, whatever, please consider subscribing. Please consider sharing this with your friends, your network. If you liked it, please push the like button. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments section below. I still have a lot of videos coming up. You know, I'm very active on my YouTube channel. I just completed my European adventure playlist after about well over a year. And I still have my cross-country road trip adventure coming up, I believe every Saturday or Sunday. I can't remember, sorry. But I still have those that I'm working on. Still a lot of content that I'm producing for my channel. So if you've subscribed to me already, I want to thank you. If you liked any of my previous videos, I'd like to thank you as well. I have a lot of things coming up. Stay tuned. Take care. Thank you.